Right, we're discussing today's top news stories now with Tom Swarbrick and Camilla Tominey.
Well, we're obviously starting with the very sad news this morning that yesterday police searching for missing mum of two, Nicola Bulley, found a body less than a mile from where she vanished almost a month ago. Well,
our reporter Isla Traquair is live from the scene in Lancashire now to bring us all the latest. Hi, Isla.
Hi, Holly. Well, you come to me and there's a very sombre feeling here today, even though we have yet to receive confirmation if the body found yesterday is that of Nicola Bulley. It was yesterday on the 23rd day since the mother of two went missing, sparking what's been the most extensive and divisive investigation by Lancashire Police in recent times. And it was two dog walkers a mile from here along the River Wyre who spotted what they thought was a body buried in undergrowth. There's a fallen tree that's decaying, it's covered in reeds, and they were overheard saying there's definitely a body there. A helicopter was then scrambled, the road was then sealed off, a police tent put up to provide privacy while they retrieved that body yesterday. Now, that area of river was searched by police and by the specialist sonar team. The leader of that team, Peter Folding, said that they were searching with the sonar underwater. They did not search the banks, and it's possible it could have been obscured from view. Now, as I say, we're still to receive that official confirmation, but her family have been informed, and last night her partner, Paul Ansell, sent a text to journalists saying, no words right now, just agony. And it has been an agonising 3 weeks for her loved ones, especially her two daughters, aged 6 and 9. On the 27th of January, she dropped them off at the school just across this bridge. She walked across here, along here, to that bench, which we've seen so much of. And that, within an hour, she vanished, setting in motion an unprecedented sequence of events. Now, that word unprecedented gets used a lot, but it really is appropriate here. The scale of the investigation, the level of interest, the amount of speculation online, the social media detectives turning up here, hindering the police investigation, dispersal orders being issued, then breaking into buildings. And then, of course, there was that press conference last week in which the police tried to quell speculation and ended up fueling it. Some might say forcing their hand hours later to reveal highly personal information about Nicola. Her apparent battle with alcohol, her issues with the menopause. Now, this has been highly criticised, along with other things, Lancashire Police themselves volunteering to be investigated over some of those issues. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that in the future once the dust settles. But our focus right now are on the next crucial steps, and that is indeed identifying the body to decide to tell us whether or not it is Nicola, and then, of course, establishing the cause of death. Now, both of those will create a challenge for the pathologists. If that body has indeed been in the water for some time, no doubt there's going to be more speculation. That's not going to be helpful for me to do that, so I'll let the police get on with their jobs. But what I can say for a fact is that there is a sense of sadness here in this community and beyond, I'm sure, the whole country, towards Nicola and her family. Let's not forget she was a partner, a mother, a sister, a daughter. One of her friends said that she was the mum that you would want to be. She would do anything for her girls. Her partner, Paul, said their dog Willow was like a third child. This community really loved her dearly, and they were quick to jump into action. They were putting up posters on every lamppost in the village. I said in my first report from here, it was the first thing I noticed when I drove through here. And of course, this bridge with all these messages for Nikki. These posters and messages were definitely ones of hope, but we might find out soon that that hope has gone, and these will become a shrine to a wonderful soul who has left a hole in many people's hearts.
Thanks, Isla. Thank you very much indeed. So we've got Tom and Camilla here now. So many bits. Obviously, we won't speculate on this. That's unhelpful for family, police, the whole thing. But what we can say is search expert Peter Folding was the last person to scour the area nearly 2 weeks ago on the 6th of February, and he said at the conclusion of his 3-day investigation, if Nicola was in the river, I would have found her. She's not there.
It's tricky, this, because I've read a number of different reports this morning just talking about the river and people with experience of searching the river, and there are a number of different aspects. The idea that there are a lot of reeds which could conceal a body, which couldn't perhaps be picked up on sonar. Apparently there are quite a lot of eels in the river, which again make the search quite difficult. Clearly, efforts had been made on 3 different occasions to spot a body along that particular stretch of the Wye. It's difficult to say what's gone wrong, if anything, why a body hasn't been spotted sooner. Quite often, though, in cases like this, you know, there is an extensive search, and just due to time and the way that the tidal flow of that river occurs, that it's not uncommon for it actually to end up being dog walkers and members of the public that find bodies. I know that seems ridiculous perhaps to people, but sometimes the police search, we don't know. Was the body submerged for a couple of weeks? It's really difficult.
Tom, I wanted to ask you about the social media reaction to this and these sort of armchair detectives that people are talking about. Do you think sort of going forward, the way police handle things in future has to change because of this reaction that there's been online?
Well, there's definitely been. I mean, you see the instances on TikTok of people literally saying that they've gone in at night to residents' gardens to search in bushes, and you just think, what are you doing? So
the words of that TikToker were actually being in people's back gardens at night time with torches.
I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I think maybe that I saw some criticism of the police that maybe they need to section areas off, close areas off, put tape around it, make sure that no one can get into various areas.
For TikTok? You're doing that for the sake of TikTok?
I had a guy ring me 2 weeks ago, said, I went down to St Michael's on Wyre to see what help I could offer. And I put it on TikTok and shared it around. And this guy had no expertise, didn't know what he was doing, didn't know where to look, didn't have any contact with the police, the family, the local residents.
Potentially hampering an investigation by walking over what could have been a crime scene.
And all for social media clicks. All for, you know, go and offer help, that's fine, that's great. If you want to stand at a road sign, hold a poster, absolutely fine. People are very, very, understandably, very moved by this. But the idea of doing it because you want the likes on social media, because you want to look like you're involved in something that the country's talking about, is just terrible. I don't actually know what the police can do about it, and I'm not really sure in some of the press handling of Lancashire Police that they've done a particularly good job. I think they have been distracted.
I think, you know, actually the police have got an extraordinarily difficult job balancing the needs of the press to report on latest developments with the family's need to maintain privacy and try and keep it together for the sake of these 2 young girls. However, a vacuum was created that has been filled with amateur sleuths not helping. Now, you know, often the mentality is to blame the media, but what the media is trying to do is to keep a missing persons inquiry alive, to invite people to come forward who might have valid information, and also to keep the public updated if there's this insatiable appetite for news. We can have another discussion about whether there's a kind of grisly fixation with these sorts of cases that we all need to check ourselves and say, hang on a minute, are we all being too intrusive? You then have the added complication.
That's fueled by that there are an enormous amount of true crime series on streaming services. Obviously, this is something that's enormous on podcasts. People looking at cold cases. So it's the culture now.
Also, you have the added complication of, in that press conference, the police talking about protecting Nicola's privacy while at the same time releasing this information about her vulnerabilities with alcohol and the menopause. Now, we can have a separate conversation about whether that was appropriate. All I would say, because I sort of feel personally about this, because my mother had a drink problem and I've spoken about it on this show and elsewhere, is that what we've learnt about her is that she had vulnerabilities and clearly there were complications in her life. And therefore, an added amount of sympathy needs to go to these children and her husband who are clearly dealing with a difficult situation. If we're to learn anything about this, it's that, you know, sometimes people's lives are very difficult, and why this has resonated is because this lady's my age. You know, there for the grace of God go all of us. Not just in terms of we drop off our kids, we go for dog walks, we live a normal life, but also because sometimes we can be vulnerable and sometimes we can have problems and sometimes we can find it difficult to cope. And I hope that people looking at this story in the round, if we're going to learn anything about it, is that, you know, even before this happened, clearly that family needed support. And I don't know whether they got it or not, but we need to look at this and reflect on that, I think.
I just listen back on the point of the social media, you know, detectives who are going down. I don't know that it is the police's job to try and deal with that as well as dealing with a missing persons investigation that has such massive media attention. I don't know that the police, in trying to quell some of that, did the right thing by releasing so much personal information. Even the family said that Nicola would not have wanted in the public domain.
Yeah. Let's move on to a different story now. Camilla, perhaps one for you. Royal reports have claimed that Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, fears that he may have to move out of his Royal Lodge home in Windsor if the King cuts his annual grant. What do we know about this?
Well, sort of royal sources are saying that this is more about fears over his future finances as opposed to the King turning around and saying, right, get out of Royal Lodge. He's reliant on his naval pension. He also used to get from the Duchy of Lancaster, which was obviously under the Queen's auspices and is now under the King's, 250 grand a year to kind of maintain his lifestyle and the upkeep of Royal Lodge. The Queen, you might argue, would be more generous with her second and some say favourite son than a brother who seems to want him out of the royal spotlight somewhat. However, it also needs to be stated that he's inherited quite a lot of money from his late mother. I don't think he's short of a few bob. He managed to sign this 75-year lease for £1 million more than 10 years ago on this property in the middle of Windsor Great Park. I mean, you know, if you had to buy this mansion, it would be costing you millions anyway.
30 million quid,
but also,
private market.
because I don't understand how that works, and I'm sure many people don't understand how that works. So sign the lease, you thought that's on royal land, so, you know, sort of the royal family would own that land and own the building, and he wouldn't have to pay his lecky, and he wouldn't have to pay, you know, rent or anything like that. So
he had to pay £7.5 million worth of renovations to the property to ensure that his upkeep was maintained.
His own money?
Yeah.
His own 7.5 million quid?
Well, apparently, yeah. But we know that the late Queen did subsidise, for instance, his legal bills and his settlement to Virginia Giuffre.
And he sold a place, didn't he, to have to...
But it's sounding like you... Because basically, this is coming down to... Everyone here is sort of suggesting that they think it's wrong that the King is subsidising the Duke of York. I mean, is that the general impression?
No, I just wonder if there is speculation, and it's all speculation. We don't have royal sources. We don't know any of this is true. But what is the outlay if you supposedly have £249,000 annual allowance? What would you spend it on?
I suppose, upkeep of the house. But also, you've got to bear in mind that Andrew and Fergie, because she still lives with him, even though they got divorced in the 90s. You know, they lead I've written stories about it, they lead a quasi-royal life. It's quite hard to be a blood-born prince, as he likes to describe himself, and sort of not have staff. You know, there is a lifestyle to maintain, rightly or wrongly.
Go and maintain it.
Look, the Duchess has just written a second book. You know, she's making good money. He's inherited all of this wealth. He's had to pay a huge settlement, but they've sold a chalet in Switzerland. Meanwhile, the Duchess has bought a £4 million house in Belgravia, which is registered in some kind of trust for the daughters.
Great.
There's a lot of mystery around all this.
But
I'm pointing out this idea that we're all a bit uncomfortable because it's the Duke of York, and we're like, well, hang on a minute, like, has anyone got much sympathy for this guy living a sort of grace and favour lifestyle? But then many royals do. You look at the Wessexes, you look at Princess Anne, they're living in houses that were wedding gifts from the Queen.
Go on.
If you've got your own money, go and spend it how you wish. Fantastic. If you've got 4.5 million quid from a book deal, go and buy a lovely house in Belgravia. Wonderful. If the direction of travel for the royal family, because there is an issue, I think, a bit over public consent for all of this, is to slim down, to say, well, you know, we can't really give you a £30 million apparent cost of Royal Lodge on the private market house without you being able to justify it financially, then I think that's the right direction of travel to go in.
Interestingly, though, the King's direction of travel is this. He feels that some of these properties need to be turned over to the public in the vein of Dumfries House. So he's saying, actually, Buckingham Palace, I would quite like it to be open all year round and be a visitor attraction like Windsor Castle is. So when we reassess, because there needs to be a reassessment of all the property, the Waleses don't want to move into Windsor Castle because they're actually quite happy in Adelaide Cottage, which by comparison is modest accommodation, not by comparison to us, but by comparison to royal accommodation.
Only a couple of acres.
Just a couple. But so they have to have a reassessment. You know, what does happen to Sandringham? What's going to happen to Balmoral? And I think Charles III's approach is we need to make these places as accessible to the public as possible, which I think the public would support.
Yeah.
There was, I wanted to ask about the BAFTAs last night. Kate looking glorious in that white dress.
gloves.
I mean, she looked amazing.
Yes.
there was a moment as they were walking, sort of just entering the building, when she gave his bottom a little tap, what looked like that,
Oh, let's have a look.
Now, we
It's a love
don't normally... It is... Hold on, not there, not there. There.
Bang.
there it is.
Slow-mo replay.
Now, it may not have touched. From that angle, it might have just wafted over there and
Yes.
there was air between. We don't know, but it looked from that angle like it was a little friendly pat, which is lovely, but you don't see these two...
They don't do
There it is, look at that.
There's a pat.
Is it because she's
Pow!
she's in the glove?
Right in there.
She's empowered by the gloves, I think. It's because they don't do PDAs.
You can only touch a royal bottom with a glove.
With a
on. I've
glove.
heard
The biggest PDA ever from William and Kate. Does anyone remember when it was?
No.
They embraced in public.
on their
It was at the
wedding day.
Olympics in 2012. They were in the velodrome. I think Chris Hoy had just been victorious and won gold, and they embraced, and it was so sweet. But they don't do PDAs. Harry and Meghan, they do PDAs. They're often hand-holding, but these two don't.
Well,
Quite
now
like
they
it when they
clearly
do
do.
PDAs.
Maybe
that
only if
photo.
she's wearing arm-length gloves.
Gorgeous.
I think she's saying, "Come on, get on with it." I think it's a.
Don't ruin it.
Come on.
No, I think
No,
she's
it's not.
saying we're on a date night.
Yeah,
Let's
okay,
just
right,
enjoy
okay.
this. Alison's here presenting.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by celebrities. Let's just enjoy this. She's
Enjoy
kind of
it.
giving him a little tap. Actually, the royals get starstruck. They do. They like meeting celebrities. Princess Diana at Live Aid. Apparently, her and Fergie were going nuts because they'd met Simon Le Bon.
Really?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
so cool.
Who wouldn't?
That's true.
Right, pause there for a second.
Thank you.